What's everybody? Welcome back to the Grand Torino. Delighted to bring to your attention the inevitable Dr. Steve Turley. Dr. Turley, how are you? Thank you for joining me.
Oh, I'm great, Ron. Thank you so much for having me here.
I'm delighted that I was able to reach out and you agreed to interview with me today. I think we've got some nice little topics, and I wonder if you're not familiar with Dr. Turley's YouTube station. I have a link in the description box below. He broadcasts twice daily, and he comes out with geopolitical and political synopsis of what's going on. And if you want to get straight to the heart of the matter, I thoroughly recommend Dr. Turley's channel. Doctor, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Ron. Really, it's great. I love your channel. I've been checking it out, and I loved your trip to Italy. You know, I'll be going there in about 4 weeks from today. I think it is on a Tuesday. I think I'm leaving. Did you make it up? Were you mostly in northern Italy?
I was in the Lombardia region, yes, and I timed it wrong there. I brought summer clothes. That was a bad mistake.
I'm sure.
I ended up having to rush out and pick up a few bits and pieces. So look, we're kind of pressed for time. I want to squeeze the maximum out of you while I have you, and I'm sure we'll get to do this again because I know my viewers are going to thoroughly enjoy your perspective on what's going on in Europe at the moment and how things are playing out. But before I get to that, I just want to say to my new subscribers, welcome aboard, Heidi Hay. My patrons, thank you very much for your continued support, and don't forget we have the PayPal. And coming soon for your delectable pleasure, we will have the Gran Torino website up and running shortly. So please bear with, and we'll have a lot more interaction between you and me on what's going on here in Ireland. Dr. Turley, we're just gonna wing this because I've been following you for quite some time, and it's through your unique breakdowns that I'm able to tap into what's effectively going on that mainstream won't show us. Your recent broadcast you did on the Romanian Churches. Now I wanted to touch on that one if you don't mind. With the state building this fantastic new church built in Bucharest. And because we're so diverse here in Ireland, I do have Romanian friends, and I am quite close to Romanian friends. But the pictures on the ground, where you were breaking down your synopsis, you were saying that the state and the church were kind of tandem through a symbiosis of their constitution. But looking at the picture of the church and the surrounding areas from feet on the ground, seems like schools and hospitals are very low on the priority, where church buildings are given a high priority. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, it was one of the issues that did come up, and I think it's a balance act. Of course, it's a both and. I think I used Makoto Fujimura as an example. He's an artist who lives in New York City, and he's a traditionalist artist. Though he paints abstract paintings, but they're fascinatingly traditionalist in their subject matter. And he said that he had an experience when he was a starving artist with his wife. They're living in their closet basically in New York City, and they were on a strict budget for groceries and the like. And she came back from the store and she brought this beautiful bouquet of flowers, and she put it down on the table. And he said, "What are you doing? We don't have the money to spend on that. That's for food." And she said, yes, but Makoto, we have to remember that in feeding our bodies, we can't neglect feeding our souls. And what makes globalization so pernicious here is that globalization literally reduces all of life to the economic. It doesn't go beyond it. You know, any problem on the planet, as you know, any problem comes down to economics and can be resolved by economics. Culture, custom, tradition, identity, these sort of things are absolutely irrelevant in globalization. And so I applaud the Romanian church for taking the soul seriously, but we also have to take the body seriously as well. In Christ, in the Christian tradition, heaven and earth come together. So divinity and humanity come together. Spirit and body come together. It's part of the whole doctrine of the resurrection. So we never ever stress the spiritual at the expense of the physical. There's got to be a balance there. But what I liked about what Romania was doing is it was so anti-globalist. It was such an in-your-face sort of, we're going to recover our culture, our customs, traditions, whether you globalists like it or not.
Yeah, I just noted that the church was taking preference, and I only bring that together because in recent times you'll be well aware of that Ireland was always essentially a very Christian, very Catholic country. You know, we had that big momentous occasion back in the day when Pope John Paul II came to visit, and it was a huge gathering in Phoenix Park. It was a momentous occasion. But when our last Pope Francis came to visit, it was quite restrictive. You know, people were. It was made. The effort was. I found that the effort to get to see it was very. I heard reports was very rife with barriers and stuff, and it wasn't very difficult to get to him for some reason. Now, I'm still see myself as a Catholic. I grew up as a Catholic. I didn't go see the Pope, because for me he's the Black Pope. But some of my viewers won't get that. I don't really want to touch on that. Right. The morality in Christianity. That's the ethos that's been under attack since the 80s, since the peace agreement. And what I find is globalism, its onslaught on the Christian church, whether you ascribe to it or not, it is being denigrated morning, noon and night, or other religions are left very much protected.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's part of the whole project of emancipatory politics. Emancipatory politics is the politics of cultural Marxism. And that's the notion that it's a globalist notion that the state is now responsible for bestowing special rights on people groups that are now considered to have been discriminated against. And so what they do is they actually create, here in the States, a crime known as dignitarian harm, where if you are now considered a once oppressed minority, literally no one in the majority, the cultural majority, is allowed to say anything disparaging or derogatory towards you. It's called dignitarian harm, and it's one of the primary mechanisms. Macron, I just actually did a video today. Macron is actually talking, I don't know if you caught it, on he's advocating that anybody who's guilty of hate crimes should be, or hate speech should be banned from social media permanently. And he's using this notion of dignitarian harm to do that. So the irony is that in order to make everybody equal under the eyes of this globalist law, we have to destroy dominant cultures. Of course, they're in the West, because this is where globalism is coming from. The dominant culture is going to be Christian, it's going to be white, it's going to be male. And then any other culture, any other religion is now given preferential treatment, including Islam, fascinatingly. So you can be pro-gay on the one hand, but then pro-Islam on the other. Now, how any other society would have worked that out, I have no idea. How does that? But the Marxist emancipatory politics is the key to working that out. The commonality is not their moral system. The commonality is how we, in the dominant Christian, white male society, treated them. That's the commonality, and that therefore they're given special rights. And we are actually put into a very pernicious position of, in effect, a censorship.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring the comparison between the American side of what you're experiencing it now as to the Irish thing, to our Irish perspective here. Now as you know, you watch my channel here, and I have many great patriots around the world that are following me as well, and can see the transition now that nationalism, as I've reported, as I've been seen to be ascribed to be, is on the rise. I'm trying to wake just the normal people that are, we keep saying normal people, just the people that are day to day trying to get about chasing their mortgage, and cannot lift their head up enough out of the rat race or out of the chase to see what Macron is doing with the yellow vests, and how and as you say, he's bringing in this new hate speech law to clamp down on the YouTubes, the social media, that the businesses are saying, oh, well, these are terms of services, and if they don't break terms of service. So we're having this kind of free speech conflation between terms of service and free speech. But I don't know if you're aware as well, and while I'm there as well, is the new phenomenon that's coming out of young children being targeted by time stamping. And that to me reeks of Hegelian dialect, problem, solution, reaction. The two are being conflated. On the one hand, and I'll speak starkly, that Dr. Turley, because I know you'll understand this as well. The situation is that pedophiles seem to be going into young children's YouTube games and online recordings of their YouTube channels, and are leaving timestamps in the comments section. Now, dangerous and as nefarious that is, it's also going to be conflated that now Google are now to come back in and going to shut stations down on the premise of what comments were left in their section. You can see between the two, there's a thread line. Now, we recently had that again under our Constitution as well, Dr. Turley, with the 8th Amendment, where there was a conflation of two ideas: what was written in the Constitution back in yore and how it was ascribed and meant to be articulated and understood because of the time. And then they brought the 8th Amendment, giving us the abortion referendum over here. You can see the conflation. The state wants to bring it in, so it does the Hegelian dialect, problem, solution, reaction. Two birds with one stone.
No, it's that's that's brilliant. That insight, absolutely. Well, of course, I followed the whole 8th Amendment thing. If nationalist societies, there have been very interesting studies on the connection between nationalism and what we technically call pro-life sentiments. And there's a very clear connection there. And of course, there's studies that show that the more globalist you are, generally the more pro-abortion you are. There's a very clear connection there. And yeah, it's that was a tragic thing to see, you know, when because there was Ireland was always the holdout, you know. Britain was falling apart, and I mean, Northern Ireland was still holding its own there with the I'm forgetting the Union. Is it the Union Democrats? I'm forgetting who's the reigning party up in Northern Ireland. DUP, thank you, DUP, absolutely. So, you know, they were still maintaining that good, solid social conservatism. That's a key sign of nationalism, because we're very concerned about our populations, our culture passing down. We see children as an inheritance. An inheritance is a blessing, on and on and on. Those are the frames of reference there. And when, when we saw that the vote come up, and just so dramatic, about a 70% majority saying, yeah, we love this globalization. Let's give us those lifestyle values. Let's think of ourselves as sovereign individuals. Screw culture, screw tradition. Obviously, Ireland's going to pay for it. The question is, how much is it going to pay for it? Is the question. We're paying for it, that's for sure. Western Europe in general. Look at Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe was paying for it for 70 years prior to 1991. So it's globalization is pernicious. It's terribly pernicious. And it is, I like the way you put it when you're saying you're just trying to wake up, as it were, the common man. That's the populist element here. Populism is a term that sometimes gets a bad rap because of the way elitists use it in such a derogatory fashion. But populism is a good term, using it like as a technical term for a some don't think it's a political philosophy. I do. I think it's a political philosophy that says that the people, not elites, not corporatist globalist elites, the people are the best protectors of our cultures, customs, and traditions. And so what your mission of waking up people is to the fact that they're losing that. That's being taken away from them through a process known as disembedding in globalization and detraditionalization, all these funny sociological terms. But I think you've got your finger on the pulse perfectly. There is a sense of a populist awakening where people are recognizing that it really is your common man, your everyday person who has no ambitions of ruling the world or anything like that, just wants to love his wife and his kids and the like, that person is the best custodian for culture, custom, and tradition, not a bunch of globalist elites.
Yeah, that's a fantastic breakdown. Thank you for that, Dr. Turley. I couldn't have articulated that better myself. I'm hodgepodging and mixed. There's so many things I would love to bring up with you, but I'm going to go back to probably your new encounter with. I'm going to go back to Italy. Salvini, Liga, recently just won the Sardinia elections there, 49%. That's a huge change now in internal Italian politics, but also gives the League now a huge sort of draw going into Brussels, into the European elections. Have you any thoughts on that?
What's going on? Thank God for Italy right now. I really appreciated, Rowan,
People really don't appreciate that.
Yeah, your interviews were fantastic with some of those those two league members in particular. I learned so much on that interview. I would recommend that to your viewers and to mine. So up till March 4th of 2018, this was basically either a Central European, Eastern European, Russian phenomenon. And this is the European theater, right? We can go into India with the Bharatiya Janata Party, the BJP, the biggest right-wing party on the planet.
I'm always looking at the Balakstan people, the persecution of the Balakstan.
Yeah. No question. I mean, it's good. Nationalism has its dark side. We're realists here. We recognize 100%. Humans never fail to disappoint. So we can be very excited that globalism is going down. It is. The question is when and how much damage does it create? And but we always have to be careful what replaces it. I think we're very excited about what's replacing it, but it has its dark side as well. Same with Japan, where you're seeing this rise of imperial Shintoism coming back in extraordinary ways. But again, that's going to have some well, again, rather pernicious effects within Japanese society either way. But up to this point, it's been basically Central Europe, Eastern Europe. You know, Orban and the Law and Justice Party of Poland, Babis in the Czech Republic.
AfD making gains in Germany.
Oh, absolutely. Now that's what I mean. So when we start up to this point, it was always 13%, 10%. It was definitely making big statements, but the nationalist populace had yet to break through and actually form a government. And I think two elections in particular that really interested me was the March 4th election in Italy, and the one just prior to that in Austria with Sebastian Kurz, basically stealing Heinz Christian Strauss.
Yeah. I seen your analysis. They came in and just took the narrative and took it off the right that was coming in, and just, as I would suspect Fianna Fáil will do over here. And our opposition party is Fianna Fáil, but they're just hand in tandem with Fine Gael, our government, government power. No opposition, allowing everything to go unrestricted. But as soon as they see the winds of change coming, they'll be straight onto the right wing.
Populist left parties have been trying, but because of we talk about like the three insecurities that are rising out of globalization: border security, economic insecurity, and cultural security. The cultural left really only has economic insecurity that it deals with, and it's kind of Marxist sort of fashion. They have that. But the right has all three. The right is interested in borders, they're interested in economy, particularly economic nationalism, and they're very interested in culture. And that seems to be a winning formula of the 10, 13%. The Sweden Democrats are hitting 18, 19%. That's very interesting to see where that's going. And
always considered a left-wing part of the world, but even Spain is changing its position. Portugal. Vox just jumped out of where did Vox come from?
Out of nowhere. Literally, I was getting emails just, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. When are you going to talk about Vox of Spain? And I'm like, I'm looking at the polls. They're like at 0.02%. I mean, that's like, in the United States, we have all these kind of fringe parties that go that get 1,000 votes at an election. I'm not going to talk about that. That's not a trend. But they just stormed it in Andalusia. So, this is the key for me. When Italy, one of the founding members of the European Union, when Italy turned and now is giving Matteo Salvini a 60% approval rating, with the League now getting the last one was around 35% approval. All 35, the parties, up from 17 when they got the election. This is stunning. This is absolutely. So now you have a full-blown nationalist populist government in Italy, and boy, are they being true to their word. They're not playing the globalist game. Salvini.
No. Trump-esque. It's almost Trump-esque, President Trump-esque. It's just cutting through the chase. You don't have to. He has to be seen to be engaging with the left, President Trump, as Matteo Salvini is doing. But in any sort of debate, he just steamrolls them because it's just pure left nonsense. And last night there was a great breakdown. He did a breakdown of I think it was 120,000 refugees that landed last year. 180,000. 2,500 are actual bona fide refugees and are still in place in camp waiting to be transitioned into the normal world. 60,000 of the migrants that reported have vanished, and another 60,000 are on welfare waiting to be transitioned or held in centres and stores like that. And Matthew just says, no, these 2,500 are the actual ones that are fleeing from the actual war that was being persecuted in their region. These guys have to go. And anybody found that disappeared amongst the 60,000, if they're apprehended and caught, like I hope that no more lives are lost, because Matteo said there was something like 4,500 citizens have died in the transition since Angela Merkel opened the gates to Europe.
Wow. Yeah, and for us too as well. That's one of the major sore points. Trump brings it up. He has the moms. He calls them angel moms. I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah, moms of murdered children who were murdered by illegal immigrants. And it's, again, just the courage, because, I mean, no globalist would ever dream of doing this. This is a taboo subject in globalization. Globalization doesn't like borders by definition. It doesn't like borders, and it doesn't like boundaries. Borders and boundaries, economically, nationally, culturally, get in the way of its standardization. It's one-size-fits-all structure, whether it's political, economic, or culture. That's just the way. I mean, basically, globalization is just like a big corporation when all's said and done. And corporations only work if everything is standardized. If everyone gets to go into their own little, departments that are autonomous, you can't run. Right? Right. You can't run you can't run a corporation. So no question about it. I think he is the first president that we've had that has come out and said boundaries are good. Borders are good. We need boundaries in our lives. We need boundaries in our relationships. We need boundaries in our nations. Boundaries are good because they maintain good things. And I love, and again, what you said with Salvini, when that, what was it? It was in southern Italy, the court that had sent him his arraignment or something like that, right? And he just took to Facebook and just said, hey, if you want to find me guilty of we don't even have to have a trial. If what I did, if what I did is considered to be kidnapping, hey, guess what? You can jail me now because I plead absolute guilty. And not only plead it now, I plead it in the future. It's so un-globalist. It's so un-elite. It's speaking the language of the people. It's speaking the language of culture, of custom, of tradition, and speaking it to power. And that takes guts, because these guys, as you see with Trump particularly, I mean, they just get 24/7 bombed by negative coverage from CNN and MSNBC and the Democrats, and even a lot of Republicans, corporatist globalists in that sense. So I think Salvini has been very, very, very brave, as well as Orban and Mateusz Morawiecki in Poland. These have been very, very impressive leaders, and they are inspiring others to do the same. And that's what's so exciting.
Very much so. Yeah, as populism goes. I would just turn quickly, Dr. Turley, over to national economics as well. We talk about nationalism as in the rise of the phenomenon itself. But Bannon, I don't know if you're keeping a hold of Steve Bannon, but the national economics based on
I am. Sorry,
there, Dr. Turley?
I thought we had a little space there.
More gremlins. No, I just wanted to get your thoughts on Bannon's espousing of national economics.
Bannon's brilliant. Bannon's absolutely brilliant. He's always trying to think 3 steps ahead of where we are in life. I share his worldview in the sense is that he sees the fundamental, clash of our times between globalization and nationalism, and he clearly sees that nationalism has the leverage, and that's largely because he recognizes that globalism's philosophy, its philosophical foundation, which is modernity, has basically died. It's died in the hearts and minds of most Westerners. Most Westerners are what we call postmodern today. They don't believe, for example, as modernists did, that scientific rationalism is the one-size-fits-all way of knowing the world and solving all problems. We just don't believe that anymore. We may default to it to a little bit, but generally speaking, we collapse into postmodernism real quickly. But the problem is postmodernism is unlivable. And so now we're kind of hitting, as a sense, sort of a pre-modernism or a postmodernism, if that's not confusing enough. Bannon recognizes that. He recognizes we're moving away from this kind of centralized one-size-fits-all colossus to more nation, culture, custom, tradition. That's the good side of postmodernism. Postmodernism is putting forward this notion that cultures, customs, and traditions are relative and that they have their own integrity. And there shouldn't be this one sort of umbrella culture dominating them all. So we are moving in that direction. And what Bannon's trying to do is to sort of put that into political action. So when you get into then the economic nationalism, the one thing I just would want to stress with economic nationalism is that, and I think Bannon gets this. I do. I think Bannon gets this, though he may push a more of a protectionist conception. Economic nationalism is not a single economic system. Some of the scholars on economic nationalism actually mess that one up. They try to turn it into just simply protectionism. Now, it could be, certainly could be. It's certainly associated with that. But protectionism is more the act of the state. The state, so that would be an economic statism. That would be a particular kind of state.
Yeah. Economic
nationalism says that the economy is there for the service of our culture, our customs, and our traditions. So for
100%.
for some people, that might be good old-fashioned libertarian economics. For others, it might be more of a, like in Poland, they prefer more of a socialistic sort of structure for that. For others, it would be an economic protection. For others, it might be a combination of the two. The key is that the economy is not some dominant tyrant, right? Some systematized structure that then comes down and reconfigures our cultures, our customs, and traditions. No, our cultures, customs, and traditions are absolute. They're sacred, they're beautiful, and they're good. And our economy is there to serve them. That's the economic nationalism we all want.
That just brings me on succinctly into my point here, because the perspective here in Ireland, the way it's viewed at here, is that GDP is the barometer of all things government. And everything in the mainstream, the media, well, we got to get the GDP. The GDP's got to be here. But as you say, nothing about the societal impact, nothing about the societal cost. Just about let's maintain the GDP and let's keep an eye on the economics of the country, and we're a grand little country to do business in. But it brings me to the couple of articles that I was going to throw about, and I'll bring them up here behind me, and I'll link them in the description box as we go through them. And Dr. Turley isn't aware of these now, but I want to bring up the comparisons of societal cost to the globalist position of bringing in more units. That's effectively through the means of human trafficking, through whatever NGOs, left-wing, Soros-funded operations that are pumping these poor unfortunate people, that are bringing them into Europe at whatever cost, death, having to travel thousands of miles. But last night here, Dr. Turley, we had one of a church here desecrated, and inside it we had what was referred to as the Crusader, 800-year-old mummy that had been on this and cared for by this church over hundreds of years. The crypt had been broken into. Some of the mummies had been vandalized, but the Crusader's head had been taken away and has been disappeared. Now, on a touristic benefit and an economic benefit, just for that church in the local area, it's estimated something like 27,000 people visited that church and that crypt over the course of last year. That business is now gone. That is being traded. But the bigger impact for me is the desecration of said article. That, I mean, it really got to us last night when I first heard about it, is the lack of respect, the pure denigration of that facility. And I'm not trying to allude or get carried away on other sides, but the significance of the head being taken, you can only allude and you can only conflate And I'll link that article down below for any of my viewers here and any of your viewers, Dr. Turley, that haven't come across it. Read that article. But only today, then, we have the night before we have this taken. And then the next article here is in referral to, we had an ISIS, he called himself a truck driver who fought in Syria but has an Irish passport, which on further inspection he gained illegally through a sham marriage and gained citizenship. But our Taoiseach, our leader, said last night that he is going to bring that ISIS fighter back from wherever he is, and he'll be given due process back here. Or some of my comments in my Twitter feed that surely he has to be taken back. We can't allow the person to be given statelessness. I mean, I'm just holding my hands here in absolute shock and awe, because I've tweeted it and said it. If you have not paid attention to the atrocities against culture, as in the Syrian monuments and crypts that were destroyed and wiped away from history, the pure genocide of the Yazidi women, the mutilation and terror to the Kurdish people, that anybody that man is still wearing a uniform of ISIS when he's speaking with me. That cuts across any need for due process. He's still wearing, to me, the enemy's uniform, and the crimes that they committed.
Yeah, Rowan. Wow, that's powerful stuff. Well, you're right. I think they're just listening to it. They're interrelated, of course. We have to understand what emancipatory politics does. Emancipatory politics reconfigures the world in terms of those who have power and those who don't. And those who have power historically always exploit those who don't have power. And so the emancipatory politician comes in and wants to bring both, that's the idea, bring both into parity. What's actually happening is he's bringing in now a new so-called rule of law, which Solzhenitsyn liked to say it's a rule by lawyers. When all said and done, it's just judicial tyranny. But we're bringing this rule of law. And what this rule of law does is it brings these minority cultures up, because now they're considered revered, because they've been persecuted, and now they're given full integrity rights. And then it brings out in the open this culture that supposedly had been discriminating against them for all these centuries. And that would be our Christian culture, our Western Christendom, our civilization. And so this new generation of people are taught that our cultures, our customs, and our traditions are actually evil. They weren't just wrong, Rowan. They were evil. They were evil people that need to be, and any monuments to these things are monuments to evil, and they need to be destroyed. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing it here with it seemed to die down, but there was just this mania to just take down every Confederate statue that they could find. And except in Texas, Texans tend not to steal. They don't stand for that stuff.
They weren't having it.
I was just in Texas a few weeks back, and I was like, wow, you guys got a lot of Confederate monuments here. And they just smiled and said, son, this is Texas. Nobody messes with this. I said, hey, all right, that's cool. So so I think that's what's going on there. And then, of course, same with the ISIS fellow. Back in the day, evil was there to be destroyed. I think this is what they're doing. It's a bizarre, twisted view of it, the emancipatory politicians. But back in the day, we lived in a moral world, and in a moral world, there was good and there was evil, and evil was there to be destroyed. And you can't negotiate with demons in the end. And I think there was a time we would have looked at ISIS as demonic. It's beyond horrific. If anything, some of the acts that I've read that ISIS has committed would have made demons shudder, for heaven's sakes. And to treat that, and to turn around and treat that like, oh, this is all a matter of criminality. This is a matter of the civic courts, and we'll take it from here, is just another example. We don't live by moral law anymore. We live by legal fiat. We live by a rule of law that is superimposed upon us by a globalist elite who are themselves not accountable to that law.
They've effectively put a visor in front of us, and we're not even aware of the visor. You know, that's blocking us from gaining access to the truth, to the wealth of knowledge that if we could only just reach through, that's been denied of us by mainstream throughout the world. Excuse me, but with the onslaught of the internet, you know, the genie is out of the bottle. So we're able to communicate far more effectively, and you know, the marketplace of ideas spreads when a strong theory or a conspiracy to conspire comes along. And we love these little talks because you and I, we're both well aware of Q. I'd love more and more people to get into it because D-Day is coming. But I want to float around. I want to finish off. I know you're pressed for time, so on the last few minutes of this section of our show, just explain to my viewers, that those that might be just watching in for the first time, the difference between the tactics used between globalism and nationalism. We're currently it's gone beyond the right and left paradigm of politics. It's now globalism versus nationalism. In that sense, and if you could just hold that caveat, Dr. Turley, also the societal consequences of unfettered, open migration or open borders, as we have here, and I'll throw them up here behind me in the edit. But the statistics are that Ireland's HIV rate is now, since 2014, and you mentioned that figure earlier on. Sorry, since 2011, from the HIV Ireland, 35% increase in new diagnosis, new cases, as the HIV Centre says. But in this statistics here, that was on Gemma O'Doherty's, she tweeted out here, I think it's from the census, 25% of new diagnoses were born in Ireland, 61% were born abroad, and 13% did not have any information of country of birth. So let's put that down at 74% of newly HIV cases were presented from foreign nationals, but also 36% was from sub-Saharan Africa, and a further 33% from Latin America. We have a huge Latin American diaspora here now, also sub-Saharan epidemic now, which is now it's epidemic proportions. But I also, because it's hot flavor over here, Dr. Turley, I also want to draw people's attention to another article here. This is Social Dynamics. I'll link this in the description box as well. Another great piece from Social Dynamics. I thoroughly recommend go over and read his articles. But a little unknown part of the ploy, which will relate to the globalism and nationalism that I want you to bring up, please, Dr. Turley, is the little agreement called the Addis Ababa Agreement in the UN Migration Pact that we recently signed, and something like 19 other member states refused to sign. But as part of the process in the Migration Pact, the healthcare system of the West has been left open for anybody that comes through with infectious diseases such as HIV, such as AIDS. The government healthcare system has to take these on. So there's another huge financial projecting power for the state and for these big pharma organizations that will just gain more power and more money by shipping people in that aren't properly vetted, that haven't got their criminal background checked or their medical background checked. And as we see a consequence, HIV in Ireland is going through the roof.
Well, I think you articulated it. I mean, that's it. Globalization has no answers anymore. Scholars are actually calling I prefer the term post-globalist because I think it's a bit more holistic, but they're actually calling it post-secular. And they're recognizing that the secularization that marked the modernist West for most of the late 19th century, post-industrial revolution, 19th century, into the 20th century, the massive secularization that marked communism and so forth, these two grand globalist secular visions that were always clashing each other, they basically exhausted themselves. They've gone as far as they can go in terms of the frames of reference that they have to draw from for solutions. And so as long as there was a sense that, we can keep going, this is a good paradigm, a good political, economic, cultural paradigm by which to organize our lives, you had a right and you had a left. You had your conservatives and you had your liberals. And we forget, too, you had a right and a left in the Soviet Union. Khrushchev was very interesting. He hated Stalin, really freaked out about Stalin. And so that was an interesting debate at that time. Solzhenitsyn was at the center of it, interestingly enough. That was an interesting debate between sort of the right and the left in the Soviet Union. We had a right and a left within this governing paradigm. The paradigm was Western liberal democracy as the one true way of doing human life. And that sounded good, sounded beautiful when you had the menace of the Soviet Union standing against you. You bet, we're standing up for individual liberty, human rights, and so on. They're totalitarian. When they collapsed, and finally, Christmas of 1991, everybody thought, you'll know, I'm sure many of your listeners know, the Francis Fukuyama thesis of the end of history. We finally found the one true Hegelian synthesis that was going to govern the world, and that was Western liberal democracy. And that's the EU began to celebrate that and do victory laps and the like. There were scholars out there like Samuel Huntington who came out and said, that's not what's going on. The breakup of the Soviet Union is about to happen here with this big colossus globalization that you guys are pushing. That's going to be breaking up as well. And I think that's where we're in the midst of. The reason so many of us feel like, wait a minute now, the politics that I've had up to this point just don't seem to work is because the political paradigm we've drawn from, which has basically been kind of a secular globalization, either from its right or its left, it just doesn't have the answers anymore. And we're finding there's three main reasons for that, because its weaknesses are border insecurity, economic insecurity, and cultural insecurity. And they're all interrelated. Because of border insecurity, there are no more borders, so we just ship all the manufacturing jobs, to work. And so rural people can't work anymore. That's what freaked out the yellow vests. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Basically, Macron ships their jobs away to third world nations because, right, we're all one big happy globe now. So we're going to ship those off. And so you have to go into Paris to work. Oh, by the way, you can't live there because all the finance has gone and reconfigured around the urban areas, the metropolitan areas that are very, very liberal. So that's gentrified the prices. So you can't live there. So you have to travel, an hour and a half or so, commute an hour and a half to get to Paris to your work. Oh, and by the way, we're going to slap a fuel tax on you now. That's when a carbon tax, whatever it is,
or a carbon tax, whatever you want.
You got it. And that just
throw out a carbon tax.
Back. That's all coming from open borders. But another thing to think of open borders is open borders means open values. And that's what you're getting at. Cultural anthropologists like Mary Douglas, British anthropologist, brilliant actually, she found that the more restrictions that people put, say, on their relationships and on their bodies, the more restrictions they put on their boundaries. So, for example, if you're part of a community that says, when you get married, you have to marry somebody from this community, that will by its nature create a fence around who's allowed into that community. But if I turn around and say, oh no, you can marry whoever you want, it doesn't matter, well, then the fence falls down, you see. Open borders mean open values. And so what we're finding is that globalization kills. Exactly. It destroys our customs, cultures, and traditions because it relativizes them to these one-size-fits-all cosmopolitan lifestyle values that turn the human person into a consumer who doesn't care about culture, custom, tradition, has no loyalty to land, ethnicity, language, or anything like that. And what we're finding is that we're losing what it means to be human when all is said and done, because culture is integral to the formation of what it means to be truly human. Culture gives us the literature, the art, the architecture, the music, the poetry, in its own unique embodiment that communicates to us the true, the good, and the beautiful in life transformative ways that malls and shopping centers never can.
On that great point there, I'm gonna wrap this short little interview up for now, Dr. Turley. I can't thank you enough for joining me. Again, I'll leave links to Dr. Turley's YouTube channel in the description below. Also, check out his website there as well. You have many great books written by Dr. Turley and stuff like that. And I encourage you to go back and review some of the other videos. And don't forget to press the little blue bell on Dr. Turley's YouTube, and you'll also be reminded of great broadcasts over there.
Absolutely.
Dr. Turley, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate this, and I hope we can do it again in the future. And for you and for yours, thank you very much for yours. With that, everybody, just a quick reminder, don't forget to press the little like button, the subscription button, and also the little blue bell, and you'll be reminded of future conversations here on the Grand Torino. Keep an eye out for more upcoming events and more videos to drop for music, art, the latest news, what's going on. We're trying to bring you some different angles. We report on throughout Ireland and all the current situations that's going on here in Ireland pertaining to what's going on in Europe. Us, everybody.